Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
Welcome to the Print soft cover. We have with us Munaf Kapadia. He's the founder of the Bohri Kitchen. If you've been in Mumbai, you've most definitely heard of the fine home dining experiences that the Bohri Kitchen offers. Welcome, Munaf, and he's here to talk about his new book, How I Quit Google to Sell Samosas. I have a copy right here with me. Let me just unveil it for our audience here. Here, that's Munaf eating samosas on the cover. And a really funky font. So, Munaf, do you want to start by telling us why did you choose to write this book?
Sure. First of all, Mansi, thank you for having me here. Really appreciate it. Why did I choose to write this book? So this book is actually written by me and my wife, Zahabia. We've co-written the book. For me, the Bohri Kitchen, when we started 5 years back, 6 years back, it started as a Facebook startup.
Okay.
Right. In fact, there's a chapter in the book where I say that the Bohri Kitchen is more FB and less FNB because it's more of a social media startup than it is a food business. Because I'm not a food entrepreneur, I'm a storyteller. That's what for me has always been the fun behind running the Bohri Kitchen and building it as a brand. It's been about narrating a story of a mother and a son who had a fight over a television remote one day. And it led to this idea of working together to amplify my mom's cooking talent and give it a voice and create awareness for it. And then the rest of it is history. The book is an extension of storytelling for me. So in fact, it's been over 2 to 3 years since I've been wanting to find another way to narrate the story. So when I got this opportunity from HarperCollins to actually put it on paper, and my wife agreed to help me convert it into text, I grabbed that opportunity, and I'm just very happy to say that stories come out really well on paper. My same terrible sense of humor is on those pages. The food has been described so well that it does justice to my mom's cooking. And most importantly, I think the story of an entrepreneur, of what I've gone through in the last 5 years, has very sincerely come out on text. And I think that's the answer to your question on why I chose to.
Basically, all the sweat and tears and the smiles that you have had throughout this entire journey, all encapsulated in this 250-page book. Why the title though? Quit Google to Sell Samosas. The Bohri Kitchen is much more than just samosas.
Absolutely. It's actually a tagline that's stuck on me.
Okay.
Ever since so there are a couple of these terms that have got stuck over the last 5 years. The Bohri Kitchen. My designation is not founder; it's chief eating officer.
Eating officer, right?
Yeah, at TBK, people love that, and it's a very accurate definition because honestly, I think that's all I did for the business in the last 5 years. I made a Facebook page and I ate food. That's what I did. And the third sort of identifier that got stuck to the Bohri Kitchen and to me, my role is I became the guy who quit Google to run the Bohri Kitchen, to start this thing with his mother. So how best to encapsulate that in limited words is I quit Google to sell samosas, because there's this beautiful contrast. And honestly, the book is mainly about that. It's not just about TBK. It's not just about the food or the community. It's a lot about how does somebody like me or anyone, the average person out there, let go of their dream job, their dream career, or anything that they consider to be something they're currently doing, which is fantastic, to pursue something diametrically different. That's what this book is about.
So what does food really mean to you? I mean, growing up, what was your relationship with food like? Did you ever think that you would be selling food? It's so yummy that I can actually make money off it someday.
So ever since I learned what marketing is in a classroom, the first thing I've ever wanted to sell is my mother's food. Purely because it was very obvious to me that there is a demand-supply gap when it comes to food from the Dawoodi Bohra community. Anyone who knows what a Bohri is or knows a Bohri at some point in time or the other would have gone up to his or her friend and told them that, hey, I want to come to your house or I want to come to your wedding because I want that food. My entire childhood, the tiffin that used to come from my house to school used to be attacked by my classmates. I made friends. I became close to colleagues. I probably even got promoted because I gave food from my made by my mom to people in office. Um, so yes, ever since I learned how to sell anything, I've been wanting to sell mom's food. And that one day when we had that fight at home over the TV remote, an idea struck me that, hey, just on the weekends for fun, why don't I try to apply everything that I've learned at Google in terms of digital marketing, but to the world of social media, on Facebook, on Instagram, on other platforms, and kind of leverage my mother's tremendous skill set and as I shamelessly say, monetize her skills. And that's kind of how it all fell together, and that's it's since then that I've been wanting to sell my mom's food.
So, this kind of pop-up, it's not very common, even in a city like Mumbai, where somebody invites you home to have home-cooked food in, in the privacy of their house. What were some of your trepidations while launching this venture, while, going down this path?
So, I mean, for the sake of brevity, I would say two big fears. Fear number one is my father. My dad was completely against the idea. He said that, Munaf, you can invite how many ever people you want, but you can't charge them money to eat. Invite whoever you want. I don't mind. Invite thousands of people. He's totally open to that. But how can you charge someone to eat food made at your house? Right? And then my logic was that until you charge them, how can you build a business or a brand if people are not paying for it? Ultimately, the first 5 experiences that I ran, I did it by lying to my dad. I told him my friends had come over for food. And when I took money from them, I made sure my father wasn't around. It's only after those 5 experiences when my dad actually realized what I was trying to do and he understood the principles that I was applying, to marketing, that he went ahead with it. But for us, the home dining experience was never about money. It was about building a brand and inviting a very select class of people into my house, who then became our early adopters and our evangelists. And that's how the foundation of this brand into this word of mouth behemoth that it turned into eventually in Bombay. So fear number one was my father. Fear number two is how can we have strangers coming into my house?
Right.
What if one day somebody, a little untoward lands up at my place? The way I addressed that was actually a little creative. I created something called the no serial killer policy.
Okay.
So till date, so now we don't do home dining experiences obviously because of COVID. But till the last experience we've applied the policy, it basically says that if you want a seat at the Bohri Kitchen, you can't just book a seat. You have to ask for a seat. You have to request a seat. And when you request a seat, we will request some information from you. We will ask you, who are you? We will ask you, where are you from? We will ask you, how did you hear about us? We will ask you, do you have any common acquaintances or friends with the Kapadia family? And only once we are satisfied and we are comfortable with the guests and the information they've provided, we confirm the booking.
All right.
And this is how the X thousand number of people who visited my house, when our home dining experiences were on, each and every one of them has been screened.
All right. Can you tell us a bit about the Bohri Buddha community and how you've also, as in going to your the home dining experience at the Bohri Kitchen is not just about going there and trying out Bohri food. You've, from what I've read, also imbibed a lot of the Bohri Buddha culture and practices, and it's almost like an introduction to the community. So, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So the Bohri Buddha community. So within Islam, you have Shia Muslims and you have Sunni Muslims. Within the Shia sect, there's a small community called Bohri Buddhas. We came originally from Yemen, and from Yemen we moved to Gujarat, and then from Gujarat a lot of us came to Maharashtra. So even my surname is originally Rajkot Wala because my grandfather was from Rajkot in Gujarat. Our food is deeply influenced by all of this. So like one of the biggest identifiers of eating in a Bohri sort of home is you eat from a thal.
Right.
It's a large 3.5 foot diameter steel plate. You sit on the ground, 7 people sit around the thal. We eat from the thal. The concept of the thal originated in Yemen. Because in Yemen, there's a lot of sand. It's a desert country. So when people would sit on the ground to eat, sand would get into their food.
Okay.
So they started this concept of surrounding their meals together and eating.
Okay.
Eventually, it evolved into a concept of eating from one plate to be more resourceful. And we brought that concept back to Bombay, back to India with us. And this is also the reason why a significant amount of the food that we eat is influenced by Gujarati food because we settled in Gujarat. So on and so forth. That's one important aspect of the Dawoodi Bohra community.
And a little bit about how do you imbibe, the history and culture of the community into the whole fine dining experience at the Bohri Kitchen.
Absolutely.
Nimak Dani, for example, from whatever I've read.
Thank you for all the book plugins. I really appreciate it. So, yes, 100%. So, and all of this kind of happened. It just happened. It all fell into place. So none of this was planned for. When we started the home dining experiences. So over the years, as we started inviting guests into our house, they would ask me questions, and before I knew it, these questions turned into FAQs. And before I knew it, the FAQs turned into an SOP, where 50% of what we served our guests was food, but the balance 50% was the experience itself of eating in a Dawoodi Bohra home, of eating with the Kapadia family. So typically, what would an experience look like? All the guests would come, they would sit on the ground. They would sit around the thal. I would give them the same piece of information that I gave you right now about what is a thal.
Right.
In fact, a lot of that I learned myself because of the Bohri Kitchen. Then we start our meals by tasting salt. So so a namak dani is a container of salt. So we give them a namak dani and they serve themselves salt. And we do this because salt, being a natural antibacterial, cleanses your palate. It activates your taste buds. So it's kind of like you start drooling before the meal even starts.
Right.
Then we serve the starters. We call them kharas, the savory items. So we serve them some smoked patti samosas or Russian cutlets. Then we serve them a sweet dish. Suddenly, everyone's surprised that, hey, why are you serving us dessert already? So Bohris follow a tradition called kharas mithas, where we alternate between savory and sweet to reset your palate. Yeah. And in fact, legend has it that it's good for digestion when you have something sweet in between. So we serve them like a malai khaja, a pastry stuffed with fresh malai.
Okay.
After that, we serve them the ran, which is typically the USP of one of our experiences. So the ran in red masala, a 24-hour marinated a leg of lamb, garnished with salli wafers and coriander. Again, we follow an interesting sort of tradition out here where we don't give them cutlery. So when we serve the ran, everyone's staring at it, wondering where is the fancy carving knife, and we tell them that, guys, we can give you a knife if you want. But the true test of whether this dish was made properly and whether mom, who's busy looking at everyone nervously, did it well, is if the meat falls off the bone.
Right.
And the only way to test that is if you use your hands. So suddenly, everyone's digging into the ran with their hands and helping each other out, and it's phenomenally beautiful, that one experience itself. And like that, the courses continue, and we finally end it with the jaman, the main course, which is usually a rice item like the dum biryani or a dal chawal palida or so on and so forth. And in this manner, the best way to describe what a guest goes through when they come for a home dining experience at the Bohri Kitchen is when they leave, they don't only leave with a full stomach, but they leave with a full mind because they've learned so much about what a Dawoodi Bohra is.
Right.
But they also leave with a full heart.
Right.
Because they've learned about the community, they've understood how we eat, they've understood what we love and what we care about, and how we see things. But they've also fallen in love with the sort of warmth of a Bohri family. And that's kind of what encapsulates an entire home dining experience.
That's really interesting. And also, it sounds like a lot of work goes behind making the food. So, can you please tell us a little bit about your mother, Nafisa Kapadia, and her contribution, not just her contribution to this venture, but also what kind of a person is she? You've said that she was a homemaker till the time you started the Bohri Kitchen, and then
Yeah.
suddenly she's a part of this bustling food business. So, how was the transition for her?
So my mom is, and there's a chapter dedicated to her. In fact, the entire book should have been dedicated to her. So Zabia and I are planning. Zabia is my wife.
Hmm.
We are planning on making a sequel to
Okay.
this book, which will focus on the recipes and the food behind the Bohri Kitchen, and that will have my mom's face on
Oh,
it.
perfect.
Because truth be told, the Bohri Kitchen is 99% my mother
Hmm.
and my father. And who is she? Okay, so she is this beautiful woman who gave up a lot. She gave up her career to become, to raise not only me but my three siblings, to take care of the house, to take care of my dad. She is not only a talented cook or a chef, but she's multi-talented. As we speak, now that her role in the Bohri kitchen has reduced because home dining experiences can't happen, she started a new venture with needlework, with crochet.
Oh, wow.
And she's done it herself. Everything that she's learned in the last 5 years, she's applying herself. In fact, her only rule now is, Munaf, you will not interfere because you make it successful.
Enough of
Uh,
interviewing.
yeah, get out of it. So she's phenomenally talented, and I was really lucky, and I am really lucky that her and my dad came together, and they allowed me to run these home dining experiences out of the house. And they had absolutely no stake in it, in the sense that
Hmm.
they weren't doing it for money, they were not doing it for fame. They did it purely out of the goodness of their hearts, where they love feeding people and they love that smile on a person's face when they are well fed,
Hmm.
to the verge of exploding. And that is who my mother is.
Okay. Um, why did you not go down the well-trodden path of opening up a restaurant and scaling up your business?
That's the golden question. So multiple times, especially when I first raised funding for the Bohri Kitchen, that question was asked to me, and I asked myself this question. Unfortunately, in Bombay, okay, where the Bohri Kitchen is based, it's very, very, very difficult to open a restaurant.
Yeah, rental.
And yeah, the rentals, the overheads, the licenses, and then everything else. It's phenomenally hard. But otherwise, to be very honest with you, the Bohri Kitchen is the dream restaurant concept. The way we serve our food, the way we eat out of thals, the kind of food that we serve, the hospitality behind how we serve our food. It's literally my dream that one day somehow I will find a space which is more like a home, but at the same time has the practicality of a commercial establishment,
Right.
where we will run, the TBK restaurant, and my parents will play an active role. If you're familiar with Britannia in Bombay
Yes,
at
yes.
Ballard Estate, like I envision something like that, the same way that old uncle used to visit his guests and play a role. I want my parents, to do something like that, but purely out of the fun of it and not the business aspect.
Okay.
But I don't know how to make that happen commercially.
Hmm.
So let's see. Maybe I will make enough money at some point in time to be able to set this up myself.
On the topic of money, as an entrepreneur, when do you start breaking even and when do you start making a profit, or is it always like a seesaw journey that some days are good, some days are bad? How does it
So no, that's a beautiful question, Mansi. And a lot of the book talks about the nuts and bolts behind running at least an F&B business.
work?
Um, it's a question you have to ask yourself, right? It's a question where you have to ask yourself that, are you chasing scale, or are you chasing profitability, or are you chasing both? Um, I took a very conscious decision with the Bohri Kitchen that I'm chasing scale,
Okay.
that I built a brand which suddenly a million people know about. We were at one point in time being written about internationally. I was being covered by the BBC, and that was telecasted globally. I had the New York Magazine reach out to me for interviews. I had the London Financial Times do an article on the Bohri Kitchen. So for me, the problem statement was that, hey, a lot of people know about us, but barely a fraction of them can order from us. So how do I enable that?
Right.
So I needed to expand distribution, and profitability would be a secondary goal.
Okay.
And hence I went down the fundraising path, where it was about scale fast, open multiple delivery kitchens or QSRs, and over the course of doing that, break even per outlet, and hence then eventually break even at a central level. And so it was about valuations. It was about raising the second round.
Right.
But it's only now, because we learned a hard lesson with COVID. COVID hit us at a point in time when we were 6 delivery kitchens. We were doing 200 biryanis per day. 3 out of 6 of my outlets were profitable, but the remaining 3 were very loss-making, because that was consciously how I designed it.
Okay.
And it was designed from a point of view of raising the second round and then making it 15 outlets, and then raising the third round and then making money, because that's the business plan.
Right.
It did not work because we were unsuccessful in raising the second round, because who would give you money during COVID? And now I was forced into rethinking about my business model, and it actually led me down a very good path, where today the Bohri Kitchen is profitable. All right, so today I'm not chasing 200 biryanis per day. I'm instead chasing those 50 orders which are profitable, which are incredibly high quality, which are customized to a customer's requirement, which are pre-order only, and it's more sort of honest to the brand.
Right.
So my long answer to your very short question is, every entrepreneur needs to decide that for himself, for his respective business, and more importantly, what stage is he in his journey as an entrepreneur.
Right. And as you said, I think circumstances and time make you also rethink your business strategy and alter accordingly.
Exactly. Like if you ask my father this question, he will always say profitability. Right. But if you ask any of the founders behind unicorn startups, or if you ask any venture fund, the VC head out there who holds keys to millions of dollars, they will always tell you to chase scale,
right,
and chase the cost.
Right.
So, but ultimately that decision needs to be made by the founder and the entrepreneur.
Right.
And I will say it's a very dynamic decision.
You've addressed a very important topic in this book, which is that when you quit your job, and the first couple of years when it wasn't as easy as you thought that it might be, perhaps because you had certain savings to fall back on. There was also some amount of stress that you faced, which and you've spoken about how it started physically manifesting in you. That's something that very few people choose to talk about, although I'm sure many more people must be going through, since you've also yourself said that as an entrepreneur, it's all about your image. So one doesn't really give into your weaknesses in that sense. Do you want to tell our viewers a bit about how you handled that phase of your life and how you pulled yourself out of it?
Absolutely. So the short answer is, I did not handle it well at all. So the first significant sort of like the very big stress moment bubble that burst was around 2016, when I discovered that I was bankrupt. So I realized that I had a VAT liability. This is pre-GST. It was more like VAT. I had no idea. I did not pay attention to the accounts of my business at all, because I did not like it. I hate accounts, right? In the same way, in the initial days I hated operations. So I was like, hey, my boys will figure out the food. God will figure out accounts. I will focus on the PR and the marketing and the branding, all the fun stuff I enjoy doing. I'll speak to Bollywood. I will put out the social media posts. I will talk to the press. But I will not look at a bank ledger, and I will definitely not enter the kitchen to see what my boys are doing with the food. I'll ask mom to do that. And that eventually had to explode, and it did, or implode. Towards the end of 2016, I discovered that I had not been paying back. My CA discovered this for me suddenly. And the amount I had to pay was equivalent to the money I had in the bank. So I was effectively bankrupt. And it was terrible. Like the stress manifested in multiple ways. I had panic attacks for the first time in my life. Okay, where I would suddenly break down into a fit of tears, and I just couldn't control it. It was like a waterfall. And this is and so the funny thing is, as I went down that journey of self-discovery, and I started going to a counselor, a psychiatrist for help. I learned a lot. I learned that the problem wasn't that I was crying; it was that I did not cry enough because I wasn't very comfortable with my emotions and various other sort of like things that I had to deal with inside my own mind. I learned how to meditate, for the first time. While everyone's always told me to meditate, I never really understood the power of meditation. Until then, I learned yoga and what that can do for you. So, it all sounds hunky dory, but but honestly, I think the biggest takeaway that I've had from these last 5 years is not coming on the cover of Forbes or the amazing amount of press coverage or opportunities like this. It's really pushing myself to the brink of breakdown and then breaking down, but then being able to come out of it. And a lot of this credit goes to the people I spoke to, my circles, my mom, my dad, my wife, my siblings, my friends, who were there to talk to me and get me through it. And then being really lucky that I could get out of it. So it's very important to be sensitive to that, to understand that your mental health is far more important than any kind of success that you're chasing.
Right.
And by the way, like one very interesting thing I discovered is even my investors care about me mentally. You would think that the only thing on their mind is getting a return on their investment. Like at least the investors I had or I have, they like some of them turned into my counselors, and advisors, even on that front. That how do you deal with it? The perspective they gave me because of their years of experience was phenomenal. So yeah, and I hope to kind of like in one like if there's one tiny way in which I can help another entrepreneur or anyone out there dealing with stress through my own experiences, I hope that does happen to you.
And it's great that you've shared your experience so honestly with all our viewers. You've also done a lot to help several other budding home chefs in Mumbai. We've created a WhatsApp group of sorts, and there've been a few meetings and one venture as well that was in your mind, but hasn't quite taken off yet. Do you want to talk a bit about that?
Absolutely. I think the country's single biggest underutilized, like India specifically of all the countries in the world, a single biggest underutilized asset is the Indian housewife. Okay, making it that specific. It's not just the home chef, it's actually the Indian housewife. It is that lady, okay, sitting at home who for eons has been cooking fantastic food, who's been trained by her in-law or by her own mother or father, by her mother most likely, in the art and the traditions, belonging to her community. And then somewhere her food's being kind of taken advantage. Okay, in the sense that obviously all the children out there and the husbands out there and the families out there love the food, mom makes, auntie makes, and love her for it. But the real potential of that food is nowhere near being utilized. And the only way to utilize it is by exposing it to people outside the house. And the Bohri Kitchen ultimately was that. It was me taking food and traditions which my mom had been sort of implementing in my house for 30 plus years. And suddenly I put it on social media. And suddenly I invited strangers to eat this food. And suddenly I made a brand out of it. And I distributed this food at scale to a delivery platform and catering. We need to do that into 1 million. We need to understand the hundreds of cultures and subcultures and communities and sub-cuisines that exist in this country. And we need to find a way to give it a legitimate platform. So all of those housewives can actually open up their homes and open up their kitchens and their hearts and their families to the fantastic people in the world who want to actually experience it.
Sorry, continue.
And I think the day we figure this out, and I'm actively trying to figure it out, I'm actively trying to talk to the government about it.
Yeah, that was my next question.
Guys about it, and I've interacted with the ex-principal secretary of tourism, Mr. V.K. Gautam. He was one of our biggest sort of supporters in trying to help us figure this out. I've interacted with the tourism minister, the previous tourism minister about it, so on and so forth. And the idea is very simple. If we figure this out, if we unlock this existing talent, you will have three benefits. Benefit number one is tourism will get a very big shot in the arm. Right, culinary tourism, which is the bedrock of some of the biggest tourism campaigns in the world, Tourism Australia, for example. Our biggest tourism asset, which is the Indian housewife, will suddenly, get that exposure. So tourism will get a big boost. Benefit number two, you're suddenly empowering a sort of a class of women who's, she's obviously empowered. I don't think anyone's more empowered than the Indian mother, but you're empowering her from a monetization angle. Okay, so suddenly the Indian household has a second stream of revenue which maybe did not exist before. And the third benefit is, I think it's going to help from a communal harmony point of view. So suddenly you have like the 6,000 or so people who've been to my house. 95% of them are, forget non-Bohris, they're non-Muslims. So suddenly those people, those 5,900-ish people have experienced the Bohri home for the first time. They've experienced the Bohri family for the first time. So when they leave my house, they become evangelists for what a Dawdi Bohra is. Right. And I think that is phenomenally useful in just making this country that much more harmonious. Right. And all of this by simply unlocking the power of the Indian household. So that is the real opportunity out there.
Perfect. Have you ever regretted your decision to quit Google? You would have probably, I don't know, maybe staying in a penthouse in Mumbai somewhere, sea-facing with all your consistent paychecks. Have you ever regretted that kind of lifestyle?
I would be lying to you if I said I haven't. There have been multiple moments in the last 5-6 years where I woke up with a panic attack and with sweats. And the first thought that came in my head is the biggest sinking feeling that can happen, that ever happened to me, is I would wake up in the morning and I would crave that stability and that routine which my job at Google gave me. 8:30, the cab would come to pick me up. I would get in the cab. I would go to office. I would get breakfast. I would open my MacBook, which was given by the company. I would work 6 hours, 5-6 hours, or 9 hours for that day, 9 to 6. And the cab would take me back home. In between that, I would be with colleagues, who are very close friends. We would play table tennis in between. Work is stressful, but Google created an environment that allowed you to manage that stress. So everything was fantastic, and I was touched on a beautiful growth curve in that company. So in my lowest points in my entrepreneurial journey, I obviously thought about that, and I was like, shit, I wish I could go back. But what always got me around is, and in fact, the first chapter itself talks about this, which is how or why did I quit Google to sell samosas? Right. It's because of a perspective that I was given by my super boss at that time, V.K. Gautam. Vikas Agnihotri. V.K. Gautam was the ex-principal secretary of tourism who I referred to in the previous statement. So Vikas Agnihotri, who was my super boss at that time, and he's been really sweet about endorsing this book as well. He said that, Munaf, when you look at life in general, don't look at it from a 1-year lens. Look at it from a 5-year lens, which means don't worry about what will happen next year. So you quit your job at Google today, and next year you decide that, hey, the Bohri Kitchen did not work out and you need a job again. You will figure it out. You will get a job. You'll either get a job again at Google or you'll get it at another, a fantastic company. And within a 5-year time frame, everything will normalize again. So whatever you gave up in that 1 year, you will realize it averages out. And then before you know it, you will forget that you took a break for a year and you will be back on that trajectory you would have been if you had stayed in Google. And that's how life works out, especially when you work hard, which Munaf, I know you do. But imagine if after a year you realize the Bohri Kitchen is something worth continuing. So you continue it for 2 years, you continue it for 3 years. What that will unlock for you is a path which will be abnormal in various ways. Maybe the money is not as good, but what you will learn from just the experience you'll have the confidence that you will build for yourself, the the exposure that you will get, the life lessons that you will learn along the way, it will be uncomparable to the job, that whether it's at Google or any other company that you work for.
Right.
And touch wood, that's exactly what happened for me. So today, who I am is because of the 5 years that I put in at the Bohri Kitchen and those decisions that I made. And hence, from that point of view, I have absolutely no regret about the decision I made to leave my job at Google. And to be honest, I really believe that, and I've said this multiple times in the company, that in the book, that the best companies in the world are not necessarily the ones which have no attrition or have less attrition. They're actually the ones who know when to let you go.
Let go, right.
And somewhere I think Google is that, because leaving a company, any job, or even like, shutting down a business, it doesn't have to be permanent. That is just another step in your life towards the next step. And you never know, maybe I will work for Google one day again, if our destinies align, or maybe I'll do something else which I had to give up for the Bohri Kitchen. So it's when you suddenly start looking at life from that point of view, you realize the only common denominator in all of this is you.
Right.
And it's your experiences, and it's your personality, and it's your perseverance, and it's your everything. And yes, there is a bank account at the end of the day, but somewhere you will realize that this gets sorted, when this is happening. This is just a byproduct. And that's the path I am trying my best to be on.
That's a really nice way of looking at it. Moving on to our final question, you've already spoken a lot about how the pandemic hit and the business was affected when you were just about to scale it up, etc. But there are also certain softer aspects that the pandemic seems to have really wiped away. For example, now sitting around a 10-15 strangers sitting around a table eating from the same thal sounds almost unimaginable in today's day and age. And I mean, as you've said in your book as well, these kind of experiences were exactly what the world needed, because everybody is getting more insular and you want, more harmony among people and, generally. So do you think we can see better days now anytime soon, or this new normal which has distanced people further? Do you think that might change in the near term horizon?
So the F&B industry in general has taken a very, 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 very big body blow. I think with the Bohri Kitchen, somewhere we are lucky. And this is despite some very difficult things I had to do. I had to, for the first time in my life, let go of some 35 plus people. It's the hardest thing I have ever done in my life. But I say I'm lucky because the Bohri Kitchen is still alive. In fact, I think we are stronger than we've ever been from a fundamental, foundation point of view.
Right.
The way we are trying to build the business today, the way we built our P&L, the way we decided what kind of food we are going to sell, so on and so forth. I think somewhere the pandemic forced me to make the Bohri Kitchen not for the next 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, but make it into something that maybe my children, will continue. And that just changes the game completely. So I am lucky in that sense. But the F&B industry, there are a lot of people who unfortunately will not be able to get back on their feet. And I've seen that around me. Some of the nearest and dearest people I know who run fantastic restaurants, they can't afford to keep this going. And as we speak, there's a new lockdown.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I honestly don't know. I'm not wise enough to be able to foresee what's going to happen with them. All I can say is that if there's one industry which has to survive and will survive anything and everything, it's the food industry. People have to keep on eating. And when things get better, and I'm sure they will, and the vaccine will help, and whether it takes another 3 months or 6 months, things will normalize. The F&B industry, the food industry, will be the first to bounce back. And I am sure of that. The question is how many people, will still be around when that happens.
Right. Okay, thank you so much for speaking to the print and for giving such a candid version of your experience of building the Bohri Kitchen and scaling up as an entrepreneur and the ups and downs that come with it. Thank you so much. Please do read this book, How I Quit Google to Sell Samosas, while thinking of some really mouth-watering mutton samosas.
Thank you, Mansi. Thank you so much. It was a lot of fun, and I hope your audience appreciates this interview.
I'm sure they will. Thank you.
Thank you.